all of the modules, rows, and sections in Divi, as well as the page itself, can have a background to it. That background can have a multitude of options. You can have a color, you can have a gradient, you can even have things like videos and photos be part of that background. So in this video, I want to explain to you the basics of backgrounds, how to change them, how to find them, and how to manipulate them in a section, a row, and a module. All right, we're going to roll down here to somewhere where I have a section, a row, and a module. So this is a good place here. So this section has a purple background. So we're going to start with the biggest chunk, which is the section. Now also know that the page has a background as well. It's going to be under this gear here. And actually the entire website has a background as well. So you can always look for that under backgrounds. The section comes bigger and bigger as we go along. And just like in all things in cascading style sheets, which is something that Divi is built on, it means that the most local change is going to take precedent. So if the website has a background, the page has a background, the section has a background, and the row has a background, and a module has a background, the module itself's background is what is going to show up on the top of things. Okay. So it goes from the most global to the most local, and the most local information is the thing that is the most prominent for whatever that specific piece is. Okay, so let's go with a section first. In general, most of our backgrounds are section backgrounds because that helps divide out what is the section visually. And in this case, the section is this purple area here. So if I click on the gear, that's going to open my dialog box, and you'll see in section settings, we don't have a ton of settings here. We do have some more stuff under design, but we're going to go right here to the background, and we're going to be able to see the tabs here as well. So primarily there's the background color. And if we want to change the background color, we just need to click the buttons here and change the background color. I'm going to put it back to, let's go with a green. That makes it super obvious in this case. We also have a gradient that we can choose. We have a background image, we have background videos, we have a pattern, and then we have a mask that we can choose as well. These two options are brand new in the more recent versions of Divi. So if you haven't been in Divi for a little while and haven't ever seen these before, you can be like, ooh, those are new. And I'll let you play around with these on your own. The primary ones that you're going to find in the templates that I've designed, or the primary ones you're going to find in pretty much anybody's templates, are going to be one of these first three, and probably not the video. So let me explain why that is. Videos are really hard in a background. Video in a streaming fashion that comes up on the internet is a difficult proposition. Okay. In general, we don't want to host videos on most of our websites. For most of the folks that I'm talking to that are in my template program, or who have websites that are watching videos like this, you're probably going to be using what is called a shared hosting plan or a managed WordPress hosting plan to be able to host Divi on. Neither of those plans have enough oomph in the server, or you may not have enough knowledge to reduce down the size of the video to make it load effectively on your website. In general, when you put a video on your website, I highly recommend that you embed it from a streaming source such as YouTube or Vimeo or any of a host of other ones out there that you can get your hands on. But YouTube and Vimeo tend to be the two most common ones. That's going to make it easy for that video to load. It's going to offload the necessity for the streaming off of your website hosting and place it onto wherever that video is hosted and you've embedded it from. So it's on YouTube and it's on Vimeo to be able to stream that video effectively. And trust me, they have the ability to be able to do that. They have codecs that help reduce the size of the video, get it ready for streaming. And yes, sometimes it mucks around with the quality of the video, but in reality, it gets it streamed in a way that can make it palatable for the user. Oftentimes we on our websites out there, unless you're very dedicated, and I'm going to go with the fact that if you're that dedicated, you probably are not needing to watch a video like this one. So just know videos are treacherous to put in this area because you can't put a streamed video in as a background. All right. So that's the biggest reason for that. I really recommend you stay away from videos as backgrounds altogether, unless you really know what you're doing or you get some help. Let's leave it at that. Okay. So the most common ones you're going to use are an image, a gradient, or a color. We've already looked at the color. It's a relatively simple one to use. Let's go ahead and look at the gradient. So when you don't use one of these, you have to hit this plus sign to offer it. Now, I want you to notice that the gradient trumps the color that we had put up there. The background color is still this bright green, but when I click over here, you'll see that it's now the gradient is what is showing up because the gradient is going to come over the top of the color. So it says here gradient unit is %. Place gradient above background image. So we have a choice here to be able to say that the background image, that the gradient would go over the top of it, or if we leave that unchecked, it would go under it. But it's always going to go over the color. And then that unit, by the way, is how much here. See where it says 100% and 0%. Okay. So let's figure out how to change these colors. So we have these two little dots here. We have a blue dot and a green dot. If we click the dot, we can change the dot's color. So I can click here and we'll change this one to yellow. I like making these. I use this template because it's colorful anyway, but I really like being able to make this colorful for you guys, even though it looks hideous, it gives you an example. And when you're playing with it, if you can make it the most hideous colors you can, it'll help you understand. If you do it subtle, sometimes it doesn't always make sense. Okay, so these percentages are going to matter. As we pull this slider, we can pull these over. Now you notice as I get it pulled over, you can see that that gradient takes up more of that space. So back here again to our percent, we can also use a variety of other measurements, but we're going to stick it at percent because percent is the easiest for us to deal with. Okay. So back here, see as I move it up, more of it becomes yellow. So 41% of it is pink and more of it becomes the yellow. If I want it to have a hard line between the pink and the yellow, then I'm going to pull this to 50%, 49.50, and I'm going to take the yellow one and dump it right over the top of it. So if it's exactly 50%, that line is going to be really clean. If I separate them out, it is going to start to have a little bit of a gradient effect to it. I can switch them around, which I already did. You can change the colors. You can also alter the opacity of the colors. If you click on it, you can pull this opacity down. So what is under it, in this case, that green background, is going to show up through the gradient. And that's going to become important in a moment when we sit down here and go to the background image, which we're going to do. A couple other things that I want to cover in the gradient. I can change the direction of the gradient to be from side to side or top to bottom. So I can just use that slider and move the gradient around. You can see it kind of rotate there. I can repeat the gradient if I want to do that. So it'll make something that's kind of striped. That's sort of really ugly. And then I can say place gradient above background image, which we're going to play with here in a moment. So let's move on to the background image part because we've kind of got an idea on the gradient piece. So we're going to go ahead and add a background image. And I'm just going to go to the grab something from the library. Let's just use this one. That's the 2 megabyte image. I probably should have used a different one. Let's go ahead and pick a different one because that one's going to take forever to load. I forgot that was a big file. Okay, here we go. I put that on as an example of not what to do. All right, so now we have a horse back here, right? So the horse is over the top of everything. So it's over the color, it's over the gradient, and so it's what's going to show up in this stacked order. If we come down here and we go back to the gradient and come down here and say place gradient above the image, then you'll see the gradient goes above the photo. Just want to have that make sense. All right, when it comes to these background images, let me turn that off so we can see the image below. Okay, when it comes to the background image, you have some other choices here. So you have the background image size, which is cover. That means it's going to blow that image up so that dependent upon what size the screen is, it's going to cover it. Now I'm going to undo this from being the whole screen size. And you'll see that when I did that, my window changed sizes and so did how it was displayed. If I go down even further, it's going to change it even more. We're into a tablet view. Let me get out of that tablet view and then scroll back down there to that area. And you can see that the image looks different. And here I can see the horse's whole head. If I scroll out a little more, probably her nose is going to start to get cut off, or her ears are going to start to get cut off. That's part of the issue in having background images when you have responsive design. How people stretch and move their screen, or how they stretch and move their window, is going to alter how that image shows up. For that reason, when we choose images as background images, we need to choose images that will allow for that. In other words, they're not going to look weird if a little of them is cut off or a little more of it shows. It's important to look at your website on different devices when you go changing the backgrounds, especially adding images, to see how that image is going to display responsively on different devices and different devices of different sizes. I have a 27-inch monitor here, and I've scaled my display up so it's easier to see on these videos. But if I were to go back and scale it back down, I can tell you it looks a world of different than it does when it's scaled up like this. So responsive design comes with a certain amount of perks and cons. And this is one of the cons, is that you have difficulty with this image. Now, if you have an image where the action is at the bottom of the image or at the top of the image, the important piece of it, or the left or the right, you can change where Divi decides to start that particular responsive design from. So in this case, if we wanted to make sure that Diesel's ears were never cut off, we probably would choose top center, and then it's going to always show the top of the image. On the other hand, if we didn't want her muzzle to be cut off, we would want to choose bottom center, and then her nose would always be there because it would make sure that it anchored off the bottom of the photo. The same goes for everything else in here. Most of the default is centered and center. So just know that. And if you want to have it pull from the center of the image, that's the best place for you to do it from. There's a certain amount of things that you can do by cropping the image to be a little bit closer to the size of the hole on your website. But I will tell you overall, these are the options that you're going to have, and responsive design is going to change how it looks dependent upon what the device that it's displayed on and how the user has set their screen up. It's really hard for you to control. Other options for the image size are going to be cover, which is the default, fit, which is going to make it fit within here. But you'll notice we now have something else going on over here. We have things on either side of this image that are showing up because when it fits it doesn't fit the full width of the screen that we're displaying it on right now. So that's another one. Actual size will make it the actual image pixels. And then, let's go back up here. Stretch to fill will make it distorted. Please do not use that on horse photos. It's wrong. It's just so wrong. So, and then also you can enter in a custom size. You can decide the width and the height that you want for that particular background image. We're going to change it back to cover, which is the most common. All right, one other thing that I want to cover here is the parallax effect. So the parallax effect is a scrolling effect. And what happens when you have something marked as a parallax effect is that when you scroll up, and it's not showing really well on this image, but when you scroll up, it's like the rest of the page covers the image instead of the image scrolling up with the rest of the page, if that makes a weird kind of sense. So you'll see it on a lot of websites, modern websites. It'll have that parallax effect to it. In this particular case, it's kind of useless with this particular image, but you should notice it a little bit there. As I scroll up, watch the white line right here. As I scroll up, you'll see that goes up more towards Diesel's eye. And that's the effect that it is. It's just not very effective on this image. I'm going to switch it back to no parallax effect. Okay, so we've covered a lot of what these three options are. If you decide you don't want the image here, you can just click the trash can and delete it. If you decide you don't want the gradient, you can click the trash can and delete it. And you can alter these as much as you would like. You can also change them dependent upon the device and the hover state of whatever the hover is for that particular image. I'm going to put that back to purple. So we've looked at the section and how to change the background on a section. Those same options are available to you on rows, also under the gearbox and background, and modules under the gearbox and background. All the same stuff I covered in the section is available all of the way down into the specific modules. Okay, so you have a lot of background options. As a matter of fact, even on the row, you have background options for each of the columns if there's a columns in the row that you're working with. So there's a lot of latitude here for you to use color blocking, to use images, to use all kinds of things to be able to modify how your website looks using those backgrounds. In addition to that, some modules have very specific background information to them. For example, when you use a full width header or a full width image, there's another background options that come with those as well. So you have a lot of backgrounds to play with inside of Divi. One of the most maddening things in having a template that's kind of already created for you and you're the secondary person that's editing it is that when those backgrounds are there, sometimes you have to do a little detective work to find where you change them. Just start with the most local first and then build your way out. And by the time you get to this section, as you go through each place and look in the background, you're going to be able to determine whatever that background is and how to alter it if you want to do so. All right, that's all about backgrounds. Let's go have some fun making our websites colorful, but not obnoxiously colorful. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video.